sisters, we've all turned up the radio to hear Brother Jimmy Lakey, from coast to coast and shore to shore. Now raise your voice. Oh, let us all Jimmy Lakey, get out of bed. Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice. Jimmy Lakey, Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey.
Well, top of the morning to everybody. How's everybody doing? The 27th day of August, year of our Lord, 2025. Jimmy is my name. Pleasure, pleased. I would like to announce something here right off the bat. This is a gray shirt. I'm wearing a gray shirt this morning, and for that, I have to say you are welcome for me pointing that out. Glad to point that out as a gray shirt. Real gray. It's not blue. I don't want any smack talking in the chat rooms there. This is an actual gray shirt. So yes, I know my colors. I had the box of 64 crayons. Never. So yeah, we were poor. We only had 24. All right, good to have you here on the program. It's Lakey Unleashed. If you're new to the show, what that means is I have been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio, and I have gathered here one with another, and you and I are together, so that we can converse, convene, and talk a little bit about some of the topics at hand. Ladies and gentlemen, Cracker Barrel has caved. That's right, Cracker Barrel has decided that old Herschel, the old-timer, he's coming back on the logo. They said, we screwed up. We have screwed the pooch, if you will, at Cracker Barrel, and they're bringing the old geezer back. They have caved in. A little pressure from the president, a little pressure from the American public. What, 127 billion, or I don't know, a lot of money has fallen from their stock prices, and the question is going to be as to whether or not, number one, they can take the billions of dollars of free publicity they've received this week and parlay that into a sale, some renewed interest in their brand, but also whether or not anybody's going to keep their job up in the C-suite. It's seemingly reading more and more. Cracker Barrel's a place that maybe once a year we'd walk into. Traveled a lot with my son in traveling sports, and we would have gone to some more, but he wasn't a big Cracker Barrel fan, so I like Cracker Barrel. I always thought it was kind of fun and nostalgic, but reading evidently behind the scenes, they've been a little bit controversial and changing the brand for a long time. And that's what happens in these corporations. They started in the 1960s, and big investor groups and hedge funds get a hold of them, and they start tweaking it, thinking that they're going to bring on a new crowd and somehow be relevant for a new generation. And then they forget the generation that made them. Don't forget to dance with the one that brung you. And that's what it seems like this Cracker Barrel CEO has decided to do, forgetting to dance with the one that brung them. And they bit them on the butt. You usually can't lose money off the spreadsheet in a matter of just a few days of billions of dollars under your leadership and keep your job. But maybe, just maybe, the CEO of Cracker Barrel has shifted quickly enough and purposefully enough that she will be able to keep her job. Going to also be interesting to hear in the days ahead as to whether their marketing and advisory team, when it comes to the brand, whether they get to keep their job, because this seemingly was a very big blunder, but they changed courses quicker than Coca-Cola changed courses on New Coke. That took a couple of months, if I recall, back in the 80s when they decided to go to New Coke, and then Pepsi, of course, tried out. Well, remember Crystal Pepsi? These are other brand debacles that have happened and did not go well for the corporation that was ensuing those brand changes. And Cracker Barrel has decided to go back with the old guys sitting by the barrel. And again, if you missed it earlier this show, I've told a couple of people this. They said, I had no clue. The reason it's called Cracker Barrel is back in the day, your soda crackers were shipped in a barrel. And they would have the barrel there in the general store. You'd get your soda crackers out of there. And the Cracker Barrel, that soda cracker barrel that the shipping came in, that was also used as they sat around the store and people played checkers on it, that have conversation. The Cracker Barrel was the old-timey water cooler, if you will. And that's where Cracker Barrel got its name. And that's why the old guy was leaning on it. He wasn't watching his slaves because he's a white supremacist. No, he was leaning on the Cracker Barrel waiting for somebody to come talk to him. He was like a po-po at a donut shop. That means a police officer, by the way. He was like a police officer at a donut shop waiting for somebody to come join him. So anyway, Cracker Barrel has caved. Give me your thoughts. Let me ask you this. I had already said on this program, I'm heading out tomorrow right after the show, out to Missouri to be with my son for a day or so, and I will be at college. And I had already said, I know there's a Cracker Barrel in town where he's at. And I said, we're going to go do some recon. We're going to go check out the old Cracker Barrel while we're there. If he doesn't want to go with me, I'll go by myself. I was going to do reconnaissance on the Cracker Barrel and the rebranding and all the stuff they've done. So the old guy's back there, but I'm still going to do some recon. But let me ask you, I probably this week would not have been saying, well, when I go out of town, I'm going to the Cracker Barrel. I probably wouldn't have said that had this controversy not have happened. How many of you have now renewed interest and you were planning and or have already decided, I'm going to Cracker Barrel. I'm going to be passing a Cracker Barrel on Thursday. We're going to stop there. How many of you have really think that the Cracker Barrel is going to benefit from some business from you that they would not have gotten had it not been for this controversy? So again, billions of dollars of free publicity is good publicity if you can parlay it in the right direction. It looks like Cracker Barrel pivoted quickly enough, and we shall see exactly how it all turns out there. But how many of you have maybe going to be going to Cracker Barrel like I will this week, and we're going to go there, but give them some business they normally would not have gotten because of this controversy. Again, breaking news as of last night: Cracker Barrel's caving, scrapping to get rid of that less that what they call refreshing. You know, if you're going to refresh your logo, refresh your logo. Don't just cut out the old white guy on a barrel and change the shape. Really refresh your logo. They call that a logo refreshment, but it wasn't a logo refreshment. They have announced they're going to cave and they're going to replace with their classic logo. And isn't that everybody's happy in America, right? Everybody's happy. They did not apologize for the hurt feelings they caused, but they promised they would never change their values, which evidently are hard work, family, and scratch-cooked food made with care. Now, I've been to Cracker Barrel before, and I'm sure they make some things from scratch in the kitchen. But when I think of Cracker Barrel, I think of a lot of things, but scratch-cooked food is not that. I say I like Cracker Barrel. I never said I'm really in love with the food there, although the hash brown casserole is my favorite thing out there. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. I hope they do, and all the best. And if anybody else is going to be in Cracker Barrel this week or the next week, let us know. If you now say, yeah, the publicity's paid off. Cracker Barrel was not on my radar screen, but it is now, and I'm going to have to pay them a visit very, very, very soon. All right, good to have you here on the show. What else do we have? Oh, anybody following Steak and Shake? I know I've been to a Steak and Shake. It's not like something that's in my neighborhood, but for some reason, throughout this whole Cracker Barrel debacle, the Steak and Shake has really been taken on Cracker Barrel. They don't like it. They say, hey, we're made on the foundation of America. Remember the tweets I read earlier this week from Steak and Shake? Well, they also have now started a campaign. They say, fire the CEO. Let me read the story. Cracker Barrel's latest modern rebrand has gone down in flames, and Steak and Shake is leading the charge to calling out what millions of Americans have already said: fire the CEO. The CEO is Julie Feist-Massino. She's the Cracker Barrel CEO that sparked a major backlash after changing the company's logo. She claimed the public just loved the new Cracker Barrel and the redesign earlier this week. The new interior, the Cracker Barrel, they say it looks cold and sterile. It's not like the original cozy vibe. Honestly, the feedback, she said on Good Morning America last week, was it's been overwhelmingly positive. Well, Steak and Shake, the restaurant chain, is owned by a San Antonio-based Sardar Biglari. He took to social media this week to lash out at Cracker Barrel. He said, this is what happens when you have a board that does not respect their historical customers of their brand. At Steak and Shake, we have gone to basics. Our tallow fries are waiting for you. Oh, yeah. And you can also pay with Bitcoin here. And basically, Steak and Shake is leading the cry to fire the CEO of Cracker Barrel. So very interesting. war of restaurants. I don't really think of Steak and Shake and Cracker Barrel as a direct competitor, but evidently the owner of Steak and Shake has not been impressed by the behavior of Cracker Barrel and is calling for the CEO to be fired. Here's the latest tweet from the CEO of Steak and Shake. Sometimes people want to change things just to put their own personality on things. At CB or Cracker Barrel, their goal is just to delete the personality altogether. Hence the elimination of the old timer from the sign. Heritage is what got Cracker Barrel this far, and now the CEO wants to destroy that. And then yesterday they tweeted, "Fire the CEO. Thank you for your attention to this matter." So whatever it is, a bee in the bonnet, a bird in the saddle, a pimple on the patootie, I don't know. Steak and Shake CEO is not real happy with Cracker Barrel and is leading the charge on the Twitter machine or the X machine, whatever we call that now, to fire the CEO of Cracker Barrel. So there's my question for you: Is all this publicity with Cracker Barrel? They're switching back to the old timer. I think his name was actually Herschel. That's why they have Uncle Herschel's breakfast on the menu, if I've made that correlation correctly. But is there anybody out there that says, you know what, I'm probably going to go check out Cracker Barrel this week or next? I'm going to do it only because this controversy has caught your attention and at least put them on your radar screen. I've already said tomorrow when I'm out of town, I'm going to make sure I go out of my way to go to the Cracker Barrel in Missouri, and I'll find that. We got Cracker Barrels here not far from me, but not anywhere I'm going today. It's 15, 20 miles north, 15, 20, 30 miles. It's out there. There's Cracker Barrels here, but not in my neighborhood. So I'm going to be staying in a hotel near a Cracker Barrel tomorrow and over the weekend, and I will check out the old Cracker Barrel. I'll do the recon, but how many of you plan to do the same thing? All right, I got a couple more stories I want to get to. I also have a couple of great guests this morning. Anybody hear this? Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, they're going to get hitched. They're going to get all married up now. They're growing up. They announced that yesterday on the Instagram and the social media, and it's anybody excited for that? I know, probably very excited. All of us are very thrilled to hear that Taylor and Travis, that's his name, are going to get married. We're just happy. Congratulations. We wish them nothing but the best. I hope they get married quickly, and then it's over, right? You know, all the talk of Taylor and Travis can go away, but they're going to get married. What's interesting is everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion about a logo. Everybody's got an opinion about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Everybody's got an opinion about Donald Trump. In the business I'm in, you have an opinion about everything. And sometimes I say a name like Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and you have a very calculated opinion, and sometimes your blood pressure goes up. There's a story out there that Vanity Fair employees are threatening to walk out if the editorial board and the editor decide to do a spread with Melania Trump. They decide to do a feature on Melania Trump. Then a lot of the Vanity Fair staff say they're going to quit on site. Well, I'd say don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. That's my advice. But it's interesting that you say certain names, whether it be Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Melania Trump, Donald Trump, Hillary Rodham, Kankles Clinton, whatever name you say, there's a lot of names that just kind of, you have a reaction. You have a feeling about that person. You have an opinion. And it brings us to the question of the day that I want to ask you. Is there anybody out there that if you say their name, you don't have some kind of a positive or negative opinion? In other words, is anybody out there that has no haters? Is there anybody out there that for some reason you can say their name and it would be really hard to find a hater for them? I know you say my name, you're going to have people that hate me severely, and you're going to have people that adore me severely. Is there anybody out there, this is the question of the day, who has no haters? Now, I'm going to prime the pump and let you know which direction we're going. This all started when producer Chad brought this topic up in the pre-show meeting, and one of the persons that came to mind immediately, producer Chad threw onto the table, is Bob Ross, painter. I mean, you can make fun of Bob Ross, a little bit of color, or whatever. I haven't watched much Bob Ross. I'm not good at imitating him. But Bob Ross is a guy that probably doesn't have a lot of haters. Now, again, everybody's going to have a hater out there. And so I'm not saying, well, they're loved by, even Jesus had haters, right? They crucified him. he had so many haters out there. So let me ask you, though, is there anybody out there that comes to mind who has no haters? Some of you have very stark opinions about Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Of course, you've got a whole hate group called the Trump Derangement Group that hate Donald John Trump. You have people that don't like Barack Obama. I mean, it goes either way politically. But who is out there that you actually have no haters for? Now, you can think of maybe a Mother Teresa. I'm sure she had somebody that was not a big fan. But did Mother Teresa qualify as a no-hater person? Mahatma Gandhi, he comes to mind. But I'm talking about, and you can go that way, modern day times that you and I lived in, is there anybody out there that has absolutely no haters? Because isn't it interesting? You have a pop star named Taylor Swift and a guy that's just a football player that named Travis Kelce, and yet they have haters. And the reason they have haters is why? They have haters because first of all, they sometimes mouth off sometimes. Taylor gets in politics. Travis tries to get you to get vaccines that you may not want to get, and that formulates some hatred. Anthony says, Mr. Rogers. That also came up in the pre-show discussion. Fred Rogers is a guy that if you hated Fred Rogers, if you hate Fred Rogers, you're probably a commie or a bad person, or you're probably possessed by Beelzebub or something. So anyway, there's your question of the day. Who has no haters? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you a guy that is far from having haters. I'm making that up. He probably has a lot of them. Mr. Tyler Gray is in the green room waiting patiently for me to let him into this stage. Tyler Gray, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you.
Do you have haters? Is there a hate club for you or a fan club?
I think everyone has haters. I don't care who you are. You know, we live in a society nowadays where, you know, because there's, in my opinion, the reason haters exist today is because you can hate someone and not get punched in the face.
This is true.
You know, if you look back in the day, if someone, you know, made a negative comment about you, generally they were within, you know, punching or at least running and punching distance or kicking distance. And nowadays people can sling mud at each other anonymously without any fear of physical reprisal. And I think that has led to what I'm going to call, you know, really haters with no repercussion. And that's very different than things used to be.
Yeah, you can mouth off from your computer keyboard in your mama's basement and not even have your pants on. I mean, that's the world we live in. Tyler, I want to remind people who you are. You're an actor and star of SEAL Team, a former Delta Force operator, and the author of Forged in Chaos, a warrior's origin story. Tyler Gray joins me here on the program. Tyler, I've been fascinated to watch. I want to get your take on this. Donald Trump is out trying to make sure that America becomes safe again. People are dying on the streets of places like Washington, D.C., Chicago, cities across America. Murder's a deal, but of all the world's capitals, Washington, D.C. Was one of the most unsafe out there. Donald Trump mobilizes the National Guard and to aid the Washington, D.C. police. They stop a long string of murders. People are now posting on Instagram how safe they feel wearing jewelry to dinner, carrying purses, the ladies are. And even with all the seeming success on the streets of D.C., you have haters out there that don't like this mobilization of the National Guard and keeping Washington, D.C. safe. What say you, sir?
I mean, you know, look, I'm a big fan of while everyone has the right to an opinion, I tend to give weight to opinions that are based on experience rather than, you know, pure opinions. I'm going to base my, you know, opinion off of my trips to DC, and you know, let's be fair to everyone and say DC has been a dangerous place for a long time. I mean, I think one thing about, you know, the younger generations today is, you know, they haven't been around long enough to know what things used to be like, you know. So those of us who are, you know, been around in the 80s and 90s or early 2000s, even for that matter, really understand how bad some of these big cities and many of these big cities have gotten. DC has been bad fairly for quite some time. And I think it's, you know, if you look at a lot of the opinions coming out of DC on both sides of the aisle, I feel like, you know, everyone knew that there was a problem. I don't think there's anyone on any side of the political spectrum that didn't know there was a problem. And so the real strange thing, I shouldn't say strange, it's not strange, but I want to make something, I was thinking about a lot about this, and I want to make a statement here about the National Guard, is he didn't deploy the military. He deployed the National Guard. And I'm sure a lot of people are going, well, the National Guard is the military. Well, yes, but no. The military is a pure federal asset. The National Guard is a state asset. And the National Guard, unlike the military, there's a law called Posse Comitatus. I'm sure you're familiar with it, which does not allow the deployment of U.S. troops on domestic soil. It's been, there's been a couple times in history escorting students during the Vietnam War that they've did exceptions to it. But by and large, the critical thing I want to make points, especially to those that are panicking about the National Guard, is it's the National Guard. They're not full-time troops. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying that they're not proficient. They are. There's some great National Guard troops. What I am saying is they're part-time troops. These are men and women who have regular day jobs like the rest of American society for everything except 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. Now, that's not, including mobilizations like this one, or if they, got deployed back in Iraq, etc. But the National Guard is the American public. And that's something that I want to be very clear. And I don't think the people that are so heavily criticizing the presence of the National Guard really understand.
The voice of Tyler Gray, I think you're absolutely right, because the media is portraying it. The military's on the street. I've heard some of the haters saying, I don't like it. There's a tank in the intersection. But these are people that are just like you and I. They're your kids' teachers, your kids' coach, your next door neighbor. And that's who's out policing the streets of Washington, D.C. And Tyler, what gets me is D.C. has become safe. And you watch some of these protesters, and they are lily white liberals, I guess, out there banging pans and screaming. And yet I watch some of the man on the street interviews. I watch some of the people posting their own videos. They're the people that live in D.C. Many of them are people of color, and they're going, thank you, please. People are saying, would you send them to my city? What is it about success? These white folks don't like to see the black community become safe. It's very interesting who's against this and who seemingly is for it.
Well, here's a critical point, and I could talk for hours about this, but the reality is those people are complaining, and I'm going to say this about what we're talking about now, but this exact same thing I'm about to say applies to their entire platform. And that is, they consistently complain about realities that they don't experience.
Yeah.
They're constantly saying things, and yet it's not their reality. They're constantly speaking for indigenous peoples, but they're not indigenous. They're constantly speaking for minorities, but they're not the minorities. You see what I'm saying? So they don't actually have any experience in those people's realities and their day-to-day lives. And yet they because their lives are so simple and so easy and so safe, they've got the amount of time. They don't have to worry about their daily survival, so they feel that they can insert their opinions into other people's lives. And like I said, they're entitled to their opinion. The problem is that, generally speaking, they don't have any actual experience because it's not their current reality.
The voice of Tyler Gray. Let me refresh the scene, because some of you are listening later in the day on podcast platforms. We do put this show live, of course, right now on dozens and dozens of places it's streaming. But a lot of you right now will be listening on the audio version only, which is going to be on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeart, Podbean, etc. Thousands of earballs will listen to the show, and you'll be going, I only hear it. Who is it? It's Tyler Gray. That's the actor and star of SEAL Team, a former Delta Force operator, and the author of Forged in Chaos, Warrior's Origin Story. Tyler, President Trump is now saying, hey, he said that J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, he says nothing would throw him more if J.B. Pritzker would just say, hey, President Trump, we could use some help here. We have people dying on the streets here. Would you help us with the National Guard here? Pritzker says we don't need any help. The mayor of Chicago, even though dozens of people are shot every weekend and people die every weekend on the South Side, especially, he's denying that he needs any extra help. President Trump wants to help Chicago or any of these blue states smart enough to say, hey, this is a pretty good offer. Let's make my city safe as well.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Politicians, let's make one thing, blatantly clear here. By and large, politicians are in it for themselves. There's a difference between a politician and a leader. Career politicians are really don't care. They'll say whatever. I mean, look, it's politics. When we say politics, what are we saying? We're talking about people who talk out of both sides of their mouth and just want to get into office and then do what they want. The reality is those people cannot say there's a problem, because if they say that there's a problem, then at the same time, they're essentially saying that they're responsible for it. They cannot be responsible for it. They will never accept responsibility for it. So they're going to, the house is on fire and they're going to act like everything's fine because they have to. Because if they didn't, they would admit that their policies are what created this environment and created this problem in the first place.
Tyler Gray, author of Forged in Chaos, a Warrior's Origin Story, and one of the leading advocates in America for veterans' mental health. He joins me on the program. Tyler, I want to dive into a little bit more to your book here, Forged in Chaos, and I'm thinking of we just passed the anniversary of that fateful, ugly withdrawal from Afghanistan. It's a reminder of how many years we were at war over there. We're reminded of how many men and women were exposed to tour after tour of duty in the Middle East. And that kind of brings about your book and the importance of it, because walking among us every day are people that are suffering because of the long deployments that we've had in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was just I did a podcast recently with Scott Mann, who wrote the book Pineapple Express. I'm sure you've heard of it, and he was instrumental in trying to get as many people out of Afghanistan that they could during the withdrawal. Which, again, I won't beat a dead horse here. I say few things are a darker stain on American government than that debacle. But yeah, it's one of those things where, look, at this point in we have more awareness and more treatment options for PTSD than we ever had in the history of this country, or really the world for that matter. And yet the reality is that the problem is getting worse and not getting better. And so really what my book is about is, if treatment and awareness is at an all-time high and the problem is getting worse, then it's my opinion that I believe we have fundamentally misdiagnosed the disease and are instead focused purely on symptoms.
The name of the book is called Forged in Chaos, a Warrior's Origin Story. Tyler, one more comment on another topic I want to hit to you. That I like to kind of get that book plug in there, because sometimes it gets tagged at the very end and then we forget to mention it in people. So we'll come back and mention it again. So I want to make sure we hit it a couple of times. I think last time we were together, it was right around the time that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were meeting near Anchorage, Alaska. And there was hope. Everybody thought the European leaders go to the White House. Zelensky shows up. We may have some peace in Ukraine here real soon. A couple of days later, I'm not sure that Vladimir Putin actually was interested in peace. Give me your thoughts. Was that just a stall tactic by Putin?
No, I mean, look, I don't think Putin has ever truly been interested in peace in Ukraine, to be honest with you. I mean, he's if he was, things would have been done differently multiple times. I think what he is interested in is he's not interested in peace. He's interested in something. What that something is, obviously, I don't know. It's way above my pay grade. But I think he's using this war, undoubtedly, as a bargaining chip to try and get what he wants. Again, I don't know what that is, but it's very obvious he does want something, in my opinion. And the reason for that is the fact that he went to the meeting in the first place. If he didn't want anything, he wouldn't have gone. So he does want something, and I think the Trump administration is trying to figure out how to give him something and get peace in Ukraine as a result.
We shall see. Everybody was really optimistic after that meeting, and then Putin just keeps on bombing and keeps on bombing and keeps on bombing. And supposedly he and Zelensky were going to get together for a one-on-one, mano-a-mano, and they can't even seem to work out that bit of detail. Is it possible that that's a war that's just going to keep going on in perpetuity? You've heard these wars that have been solved, been going on, struggles 15, 20 years. Are we headed to that type of standoff?
I don't think so. I mean, based on what I know, both countries are definitely losing a lot. And again, obviously the loss of life is horrible and tragic, but look, leaders we've all seen are willing to sacrifice lives. Something really needs to start affecting the leadership to initiate change. And until it's hurting Putin personally, I don't think you're going to see much change happen. That being said, we're going into, fall and then winter. So, you're looking at about a 6 to 7, 8 month lockdown, essentially on the front lines that will be taking place, which will hopefully give time for the negotiations to hopefully bear some fruit.
Again, the voice of Tyler Gray, and I wanted to remind you the name of his book is called Forged in Chaos, A Warrior's Origin Story. Tyler, very quickly, coming back to the book, to have you tell where people can get it. But why don't you tell people what inspired you? What was the story? What was the motivation, the catalyst that caused you to write Forged in Chaos, A Warrior's Origin Story?
The motivation was, again, I was searching for answers to my own questions of my own, mental health journey. And a lot of the things that I found out and figured out were not what was being told or expected. And so once I felt like I had answers for my problems, then it became very obvious to me that I needed to put those answers in a book and get it out there so that the book could hopefully be a light in the dark to help guide others that are still in the dark like I was for so many years.
The book is available where, sir? Amazon, all the places fine books are sold?
Anywhere books are sold. That being said, I just released the audiobook that I did the reading of recently on Amazon. So the audiobook is now up, and I'm very proud of that one.
Tyler Gray, Forged in Chaos, A Warrior's Origin Story. Tyler, if folks want to follow you on social media, websites, anything like that, feel free to plug away.
Yeah, Tyler, it's on the screen. Well, sorry, I know you're doing audio for some people. So it's Tyler A. Gray, Gray with an E. My website is tyleragray.com, Gray with an E. Thank you so much for having me again. Always a pleasure to see you, sir.
I appreciate you, Tyler A. Gray, on the Twitter, the X Machine. And again, it's Tyler, Tyler, and Gray also with the E. And look him up and get the book Forged in Chaos. Tyler Gray, our guest this morning. All right, come back to the question of the day that we have. Is there anybody out there that has absolutely no haters? The two names that have been floated are on the screen, Bob Ross and Mr. Rogers. RJ says we're the two of the happiest people on the planet. And that's probably true. Now, there's controversy with Mr. Rogers. I was reading a history of Mr. Rogers recently when he tried to broach the topic of integration and desegregation. And he actually had remember, these are the people in my neighborhood, the black guy from the Mr. Rogers neighborhood. And they actually dipped their feet in the kiddie pool together to show him his endorsement of integration and desegregation. Is there anybody out there that has no haters? Did I just see somebody nominate Joe Biden for someone no haters? Okay, it's Jeff. No wonder. Jeff says, how could anyone hate an old man with dementia? He is white, though. Yeah. So is there anybody with no haters out there? I mean, even the old timer at the Cracker Barrel evidently has some haters in corporate America. Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers, they're right up there with, and even if they have no haters, people still kind of make fun of them, poke fun of them because of their mannerisms or their way they do it. It's tough to find. I mean, I know it's shocking to many of you, but I've had haters throughout my life, and I have haters today. I have people that don't like me. I know that's shocking. Years of media and talk radio and giving opinions, and I've got people who probably not big fans of me. I had a friend who was on the dating scene. I think still is, but a couple of times he actually would mention that he was friends with me, and he found out he was dating a liberal chick or two. Whenever he said, they said, you know him, and they would go off on me, and he would have to, and he's not, He's not a liberal a conservative by definition himself. And he actually had to defend my honor as his friend because somehow they found out he was friends with me. And they're like, I'm going home now. If you're friends with Jimmy Lakey, you can't have that. Is there anybody out there that has absolutely no haters? That's a great question. Ray has a good point there. Maybe Bart Simpson, Santa, and Big Bird. Okay, so Bart Simpson's not a real person. Big Bird's not and Santa. Okay, so the imagination. Craig brings up a great one. Dolly Parton. Now, people make fun of Dolly and her endowments and her voice, but you can't hate Dolly Parton, can you? That's a good one. Dolly Parton's a great one, Craig. Keanu Reeves. I've heard he's a real good guy. I don't know if he has any real haters. He's kind of innocuous to me. I don't have any opinion either way. So, Craig, great nominations chiming in. I think the Dolly Parton one is a winner, and I'm not going to discount your Keanu Reeves one because that's probably true. I heard he's a very good guy. Here's another one. Post-mortem would be Robin Williams. Did Robin Williams have any real haters? Everybody, even if you didn't like his comedy, I think Robin Williams was one of those endeared figures that you couldn't hate. You sort of thinking of some of the people that are nice out there. Like, you don't have to like his and we don't know these people that intimately. Some of these are just stage personas. But the comedian Nate Bargatze, he doesn't even make anybody in his audience mad. A lot of these comics get up there and they're funny and people love them, but they'll piss people off in the audience to no end. And so someone hates them. But like Bargatze, probably is no haters. Leanne Morgan, another comedian. But again, these are just comedians, people that we don't know them that well. Dolly Parton is one throughout the years. A lot of exposure, a lot of involvement in our lives. And I think Dolly Parton is probably one of those people. Craig brings up another one. Craig is on a roll. He says Betty White. That's a great one. Betty White is one that I don't think, if you hated Betty White, there was something wrong with you. There was something. Betty White was just a great lady, but from what I know, Betty White. That's a good one. All right, the list is growing of people with absolutely no haters. Jeff says Mickey Mouse. It's a unique mouse, for God's sake. Yeah. I don't know if anybody hates them. The names come in: Bob Hope, Bob Hartman, Liam Neeson. You're getting the idea. Is there anybody out there that absolutely has no haters? And I bring up this topic again because I mentioned the topic of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting married. Oh, Jay Leno. That's a great one, Jim, on the screen. Jay Leno. Does anybody hate Jay Leno? I mean, you don't have to love his comedy. You might not like his show. You might not like his car collection. But Jay Leno seems to be just a great guy. And I don't know if anybody hates Jay Leno. You just might not go buy a ticket for him. I think that's a very, very, very good point. Jay Leno is a good one. All right, bring up the topic again because Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift had decided to get married. They have decided to get hitched, and everybody seems to have an opinion. Now, even President Trump said he's a great athlete and she's a real good young lady. I wish them the very best, which was the appropriate response, and I'm glad that President Trump did not get down to the dirty weeds like he has said things about Taylor Swift during election season. He called her a very nice young lady and wished them well. That should be the response for everybody when someone gets married, and you just wish them well and, God bless you, be at peace. But yesterday, the internet was filled with all sorts of conversation that you had to have an opinion about. You just had to have some opinion about even on the happiest day of their lives getting engaged. So it brings up the topic that even when you say Taylor Swift, some people have a vitriolic reaction. You say Travis Kelce, some people have a bad reaction. You can say a heck of a lot of names out there and people will I just saw that. Jeff says, looking forward to more X-rated Pringles action. If you missed the show yesterday, there was an incident that happened inadvertently, and a gesture was seen on the screen that was not intended to be a bad gesture. And I caught it midstream. And I remind me to tell the story, Delilah. We got to set up this topic. The first time I ever did that gesture, I don't know if I can convey it on the. I made a mistake like that once before. I was in London, and I was looking for a cigar bar, place to smoke a cigar. It's my first time to stay an extended time in London, and I was staying at the Sofitel Hotel, and I asked the concierge there, I said, where's the nearest cigar place? From the Sofitel, and he didn't know what a cigar was. He says, "You want to smoke a cigarette?" But in London, they call cigarettes different things than in America. Look up what they call it. It starts with the letter F and ends with the letter G, and it would be considered a derogatory comment regarding people of homosexual persuasion in America. But in London, that's what they call a cigarette. And so the guy said, "You want to smoke that?" And I said, "No." And I made the motion of holding a cigar in my mouth. And then I realized we were totally lost in translation between the two of us. And I went on and figured out how to find a cigar shop. Anyway, so that's a long story, Jeff. All right, Mike Rowe. Craig Smith says Mike Rowe is a person that's not hated. And I'm loving these names because every name I bring up on this program on a regular basis, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, sends some people into apoplectic fits. And I think it's fun to name out some of these people. George Burns is another one. If you, Bob says, if you're old enough to remember George Burns, who hated George Burns? These are all great nominations. You guys are thinking Johnny on the spot. Johnny on the spot, you're thinking. I'm very, very proud of you. Really, really am. All right. What else do I have here? Oh, by the way, a mandate. The left and their mandates. We've had vaccine mandates. We've had all sorts of mandates there. And then you had, in Minnesota, they had a mandate that every boys' restroom should have a tampon machine. That was Tampon Tim Waltz. Well, here's a new law that's signed in Illinois mandating abortion pills on all the campuses at all the public universities in the state. Now, think of this. J.B. Pritzker, or as Jesse Waters calls him, J.B. Back Ribs, the Democrat governor of Illinois has just signed into law mandating that the abortion pills, sometimes referred to as the day after pill, be available on campuses of all public colleges and universities in the state. Pause. What have we been talking about right now in America? Crime. What are we talking about is out of control when it comes to the state of Illinois, specifically the city of Chicago? Crime, murder, Black people dying on a regular basis on the South Side. 6 people dead over the weekend, 23 shot in Chicago alone last weekend. It's one of the most crime-riddled cities in America. Chicago has more crime in it than Los Angeles does. It is a poop hole. It's an S-hole. It's a very dangerous place. I had a friend last night that invited me to, he wanted to go do something in Chicago, is naming out this thing. We got to go up for this event. And I said, "Are we going to get killed?" And he goes, "I don't think so." And I said, "It's Chicago. We should rethink it." We really were talking about doing a Chicago trip and for an event, and we were rethinking it because we don't want to have to figure out where. It's kind of like going to San Francisco. You don't want to have to figure out where do I get the map so that I don't step in a pile of crap. You don't want to have to deal with that stuff, so you just avoid San Francisco. Well, we were talking about doing something in Chicago. Then we decided to avoid Chicago because J.B. Pritzker and the mayor of Chicago have just destroyed the place and made it worse than probably it's ever been. And so when you hear about Chicago, do you hear of J.B. Pritzker solving the problems? So now you hear of J.B. Pritzker, the big fat governor of Illinois, signs a bill. You're like, oh, he's going to make Illinois safe. He's going to end the corruption. He's going to get rid of crime. He's going to make it harder for people to commit crimes and people feel safer. No, when you read the headline of what J.B. Pritzker, the Democrat governor of Illinois, who wants to be the president, going to run for president here in a couple of years, Pritzker has signed a bill that says if you're a public university, you have to keep abortion pills in the drawer on the campus and hand them out all the time, anytime someone wants them. And again, whatever you think of the abortion pill or the day after pill, that's irrelevant here. It's interesting that when J.B. Pritzker finally makes the national news about doing something for the people of Illinois, finally makes the news for doing something other than just critiquing Donald John Trump, when you finally read a story about J.B. Pritzker, what's the story about? that he's mandating abortion pills be on the campus. It's like, I wonder if anybody who voted for J.B. Fatboy Pritzker, if they voted for J.B. Pritzker, I'm wondering if they said, I'm going to vote for him. Well, if I vote for him, the streets are going to suck and people are going to die every weekend, but he's going to make sure we have abortion pills on university campuses. Thank God. I don't think there's anybody that cast a ballot for that man that was saying, boy, the whole state's going to suck and we're going to have a horrible reputation and people are going to avoid the city of Chicago like the plague because it's an S-hole like a third world country, and you'd be safer in some third world countries than you would on some parts of the streets of Chicago. But boy, we're going to vote for JB. Yeah, keep Chicago dangerous, but keep abortion pills on campus. This is the lack of prioritization and the realization. This is a case in point study of a big, fat, dumb ass Democrat politician totally out of touch with what most people are thinking, feeling, and needing to talk about on campus. I'm thinking that there's probably, if you, again, think of what you want of the abortion pill or the day after pill, but I'm thinking most ladies on a campus that have decided to wake up the morning after and get the morning after pill, they have figured it out long before J.B. Pritzker ever signed this bill. In other words, J.B. Pritzker is answering a question that probably very few, if any, people were actually asking in the state of Illinois, but he signs it. Why? Because the central the central altar that they have to sacrifice on in the Democrat Party is abortion, and continuing to show that they're loyal to abortion, loyal to making sure the babies are not born. And that's what J.B. Pritzker, again, what's his action step? Crime is the topic. Everybody's talking about crime, the deaths in Chicago that the media will not cover. 6 people over the weekend murdered, including a young boy, I think he was 6 years old, murdered in the streets of Chicago. And what does J.B. Pritzker make the news for? Not fighting crime. On one hand, he was walking his big butt around the lake, huffing and puffing, saying, it doesn't feel like a hellhole to me. It's great. JB, go to the other side of town and you would not be feeling that way. But Pritzker, in the midst of a crime-riddled city, in the midst of when there's actually talk about, does the National Guard need to be deployed to certain parts of Chicago to keep people safe and to stop the dying, to stop young men from dying every weekend, J.B. Pritzker says, I got an answer for you. We're going to have an abortion pill on the campuses. This is, again, part and parcel and case in point of exactly what it is the obsession of the Democrat Party is. And I think this is why a lot of folks have switched, especially in minority communities, and Donald Trump performs so well, is because Donald Trump goes out there and says, I'm not talking about abortion pills on campus right now. I'm just going to talk about keeping you safe on the streets. I want you to be able to walk from point A to point B in Washington, D.C. or Chicago, and I want you to get there safely, not have to risk your life, limb. I don't want you to have to lose your purse, your jewelry. I don't want you to get knocked up in the head like big balls on the street of Washington, D.C. I just want you to be safe. And J.B. Pritzker's like, I want you to have an abortion. The Democrat Party's obsession with abortion, they call it women's health care, but it's abortion. It's the Democrats' obsession with abortion pills, making sure that babies aren't born in America. The Democrats' obsession with transgender and all that stuff. It's so out of touch because what is the nation talking about right now? I don't think the nation woke up in a frenzy as their top 10 items that, boy, the top 10 things I hope my politician can solve is that there needs to be access to an abortion pill on campus. The world's falling down. Chicago's out of control. People die every weekend in Chicago in very violent gun-riddled deaths. And J.B. Pritzker makes national headline that he's going to make sure abortion pills are available on campus. And J.B. Pritzker and the Democrats wonder why it is that polling numbers show them, as one CNN commentator said, Democrats right now are about as popular as the new logo that they've tried to roll out for Cracker Barrel. They're not real popular. The polling data shows that. And these are the types of news stories that illustrate why they're not very popular. When everybody's talking about something else, everybody's talking about immigration and border and deportation and keeping America safe again. J.B. Pritzker is out there signing a bill that mandates that public universities have a stash of abortion pills in the drawers so they can hand them out like candy. You can die on the streets of Chicago, but as long as that little sorority girl's got an abortion pill, J.B. Pritzker's happy. Priorities. Question of the day is, my friends, the question of the day is, who's someone that has no haters? I know, shocking, many of you think I have no haters. I have plenty of haters out there, have for years. And Sammy Davis Jr. is nominated as someone with no haters. I saw someone put Elvis up there, Jackie Gleason, John Wayne. This audience probably not old enough to remember very much of that, but I don't think John Wayne didn't have any. Yeah, there's a few people out there that probably just have no haters. You're just like, I like them. And then there's some people that have a lot of haters. And I say that because I was watching the responses yesterday of Travis and Taylor getting engaged. And a lot of folks just could not refrain. They could not restrain themselves. And when they heard the news, they had to make comments about Travis and Taylor. Rather than saying, we wish you well, they had to give their opinions. Why? Because Taylor and Travis have created themselves an environment where they're the target of haters out there. All right, we did the Pritzker mandate. It was announced yesterday that there's also been no illegal crossings of the border in 3 months. They shut down that border effectively. Good for the president. Speaking of crime, President Trump and the GOP are now working on a crime bill, which I think will be very, very interesting. Democrats continue to deny that they want to defund the police. They say they want to rework the police. So we'll follow this crime bill as it moves forward. And I also haven't done this story. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Loudoun County, Virginia. Some boys got kicked out of school and got suspended because they didn't want to be in a locker room with a girl that pretended to be a boy. So lots of that story's been out there for a while. I'll put that up. By the way, if you don't follow me on the facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page, some of the stories I talked about yesterday, I did post there, and you can go find those. There's one story that's out there, and I asked it whether or not it could be true. It has not necessarily been corroborated or publicly announced, but there is some discussion as to whether Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is this rumor or truth. Go read the story on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. There's some discussion out there that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the FDA are going to be looking at some new guidelines and or standards and or go read it yourself regarding what we call on this program the booger cootie virus. That would be the COVID-19. Remember that? We call it the booger cootie virus because you say the other word, you get flagged sometimes on these media platforms still. They don't believe in free speech. So the booger cootie virus shot that a lot of folks got, there's a rumor out there that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may be making some mandates regarding that. So go read the story at facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. All right, programming notes for you. Tomorrow, I'll do the show live. Friday, we will not be on. Next, we'll also be off for Labor Day. So we're going to have a 4-day weekend coming up, Friday through Monday. I will resume the program Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. And then that following Friday is our golf tournament, the Rivers Promise 9th Annual Golf Tournament. So really what I'm telling you is in the next week and a half, we're going to do 4 shows. We're going to do tomorrow's show. I will be off on Friday. Back with my son. He had another little injury in the football, so we got to deal with that. Just got back playing football this season, has another little injury we're going to go deal with tomorrow, Friday. So I'll be flying out for that, and then I'll be back Monday, but Monday's Labor Day. We'll take Labor Day off. We'll do Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So the next couple of Fridays we won't be on. And then we'll get back to the full schedule. So just a programming note, if you do show up on Friday morning and you're, where's Lakey? What happened? We're not on because of that. So the next 2 Fridays we'll be off, and then we're off from Labor Day Monday as well. Sherry Cree, great sponsor of the program. If you missed yesterday's show, go back and watch it. Sherry was on the program with us, our great realtor sponsor in the live segments of the show. Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com. We talked about the market, and we talked about right now that it is a market in which seller or buyers can come in and say, hey, I'll buy it from you, but I want this seller concession. So the buyers right now have a little bit of an upper hand on the sellers, but there could come a time in which that switches on a dime, and that could switch very quickly, depending on the interest rates, because what's happening right now, there's just not as much inventory as it needs to be out there. And so, excuse me, there's not the buyers have some of the power, but the inventory changed, the interest rates changed, so the whole dynamic could change. So you want to make sure you know whether you're in a buyer's market or seller's market. And you also want to know, what if you wait 3 or 4 weeks, maybe it changes for you. So the timing of it can change within a day. It can change within a couple of weeks. It can change with an action of the Federal Reserve or the lowering of interest rates. In other words, there's some strategy to selling a house just besides putting a sign in the yard. It's the timing of putting the sign in the yard. There's a selling season Sherry talked about on the program right now called the fall selling season. These are people that want to sell their home or buy a home, and they want to do it quickly. They want to do it now so that they can be settled in their new place by the holidays. They either want to be out of the house or in a house by the holidays. They don't want to be Christmas and New Year's and all that fun stuff. They don't want to be doing that. So the fall market is happening right now. And if that's your goal, you know what, I've waited and I really want to make a move before Thanksgiving and New Year's. I'm ready to get this done. Talk to Sherry, but also it's not too early to start talking about the spring market because some people say, let me get to the holidays. The kids just got back to school. But I know by early next year, I'm going to need to take action. I'm going to need to sell or buy, whatever. You talk to Sherry Creek, get a strategy together. There's a lot of moving parts in the real estate market, and it can happen neighborhood to neighborhood. It can happen day to day. It can happen with a declaration on the interest rates. There's some strategy because ultimately, if you play the strategy correctly, friends, you play it correctly, guess what's going to happen? That home's going to be able to create generational wealth. So get that strategy together with Sherry, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. If you're in the Interstate 25 corridor in the great state of Colorado, I'd say from Fort Collins down to Fort Lupton, Boulder to Broomfield, Park Meadows area, if you're in the Boulder area. And by the way, if Sherry thinks that somebody else could serve you better, she's happy to refer you to someone else if by chance there's something that you need in an area you need that she thinks, you know what, let me refer you. She's happy to give you a referral because she wants you to have the very best people out there working with you so that you can make your real estate dreams come true. If you missed the interview yesterday with Sherry, go back and watch it. It's on yesterday's program. Homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Longmont, Colorado, we're talking to you as well. You make sure you reach out to Sherry. If you're in Loveland, Colorado, do that. Greeley, she can help you there as well. Aurora, Parker, you get the idea. And again, she's happy to refer you to someone if it's an area or she thinks that's a better fit for you. Homeswithsherry.com. If you missed it yesterday, go back and watch the interview and you will get to hear Sherry herself. And she'll be back with us next Tuesday for a weekly segment. Once again, homeswithsherry.com. All right. I made a mention to you yesterday, something to consider and contemplate as we come up on our Friday, September 5th golf tournament. And that is this. There's still room for sponsors. Still got a couple of more foursomes, I think, available. We can still fit you in. Go to riverspromise.org. It's a week from this Friday. Love to have you. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. Sherry Cree will be there, actually. Meet her. She's going to be there with some friends, clients, and having a great time on a couple of foursomes that she has playing the golf. But Lehman Lewis Financial Group is going to be there. It's going to be a fantastic time, Friday, September 5th. But, a lot of you who don't play golf, you're not going to sponsor the tournament. But somebody say, Jimmy, is there something small I can do to help out? Listen, we're that time of year we're back to school at our school at Legacy Christian Academy, and we got a lot of sponsored kids, and we spend a lot of money on food every month, and we're always kind of playing catch up. I mentioned this over and over again, and I was thinking that and I was talking to producer Chad about this. There's one small thing that you can do that's just little expenses that kind of add up along the way. And one of those expenses that we have is required by government in Rwanda that our kids have a great uniform. And our kids have great uniforms, and they're fantastic when the school year starts because they're brand new. But we have a very unique school of a lot of kids in the extreme poverty. And what becomes their school uniform becomes their play cost, their play clothes. It's everything. In other words, a lot of these kids just don't have clothes. So to get a school uniform is actually getting a whole wardrobe for them. And because of that, every year we don't have a lot of hand-me-downs on the uniforms because they're just worn out. And so we try to clean them up and pass them around if we can. But basically, here's what I need. We've got a lot of kids that have sponsors, but a lot of kids that don't have sponsors. And we need to resuit them in uniforms this year. And we do this every year. And a uniform, we can make it. We use a local seamstress group. We can put the locals to work. They make our custom uniforms for us. It's $10. It's $10. And we try to recycle and refurbish. But when a kid's wearing that uniform for 365 days a year, and he's wearing it all day, every day, probably sleeping in it and swimming in it, that's their clothing. That's their wardrobe. We give them a whole wardrobe in one uniform. We really kind of remake the uniforms every year at our school. And so if you've been looking for a small way that you can contribute, help a kid get a good education, the Legacy Christian Academy in Rwanda, you're fascinated or you like what we do at our charity work, go to our website, make a donation. $10 puts a kid in a new uniform, an easy entry point. And a reason it comes to mind is I was talking to producer Chad just this week about the invoice that we're getting for uniforms. And I said, you know what, some of our listeners would help with that because not every kid has a sponsor. And every kid needs a uniform right now because, again, they get worn out. We took the kids on a trip out in a sightseeing trip just to get them out of the village. And we were at a place where other school kids were at. And I looked and I told our director, I said, why do our kids' uniforms look so sloppy? And they reminded me, well, these kids actually, those other kids, they come home, they have 3 or 4 uniforms. They come home like we used to do, put on your play clothes and your play shoes, and they put their school uniform away. Our kids don't. Our kids don't. When they get a uniform, they're getting a wardrobe. So anyway, $10 if you'd like to make a donation, and we'd love to have you help us with our uniform cause as the kids head back to school. And we're replacing, I think, about with our kids that are in our school, out of our school. We're going to be buying about 250 to 300 uniforms here real soon. And if you can help us out with that, again, a lot of these kids are sponsored, but a lot of them aren't. If you can help us, we'd appreciate that. $10. You can do that today, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com. And I give you opportunities. All I can do is give you opportunities, and you have to decide what to do with them. I've had asked people if you want to sponsor a foursome. We've had people do that. Producer Chad is on a foursome that was fully sponsored by someone who wanted to gift a bunch of veterans, which Chad and his buddies are veterans, and he wanted to pay for some veterans to go play golf at our golf tournament. There's people who do that. That was a bigger purchase or a bigger expense, but $10 is another way. So all I can do is give you opportunity to be involved. And if you're not involved in our charity, get involved in someone's charity, because sometimes you'd be surprised at any charity that $10 can make a difference. So don't think you have to be the $1,000 or the $10,000 donor. We love those. But the $10 donor is a very important part of what we do as well, because sometimes we make a difference $10 at a time, one school uniform at a time. And a uniform, you never thought a school uniform could be so cool until you get one. And now suddenly it's a sign of I'm going to school, I'm making a better life of myself, and I also have something to wear every day, because a lot of these kids didn't. So riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org, $10 buys a kid a uniform, and we're going to be buying a bunch of them here the next couple of weeks. So we'd love to have your help on that. $10, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the stolen memes section of the show. This is where we steal the memes from the internet and we shamelessly claim them as our own, rarely giving credit to where credit is due, but we try to when we can. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of Cracker Barrel, this was submitted by a viewer. Jim, I believe, sent this in. Suggested meme of the day. There's your Cracker Barrel CEO. And ladies and gentlemen, it's the doppelganger. It's Garth from Wayne's World. I see the resemblance there, Jim. Great meme submission. If you'd like to submit a meme to be featured on the program, send it to info@jimmylakey.com. info@jimmylakey.com. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. There's a sign on the side of the road that says, just told my kids I'm older than Google. They think I'm joking. If you were born before September the 4th, 1998, you are also older than Google. Yeah. Yeah, my son said, what was it like in the early 2000s, dads? I'm like, well, Shut up. Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. There's J.B. Pritzker right there as the governor of Illinois is vowing to protect us from RFK's harmful policies. Again, couldn't J.B. Pritzker come out in the state of Illinois and say, you know what, I'm kind of unhealthy and we should all get healthy again. And I want to sign up with RFK Jr. and let's make America healthy again. Let's make Illinois healthy again. Let's make me healthy again. There's no reason that Pritzker could not partner with that. There's no reason he couldn't partner, say, let's make Chicago and protect these people that are dying. But instead, what does J.B. Pritzker do? He signs a bill for abortion pills. His obsession with that is disgusting. When there's other needs, including himself, in health and wellness and safety that he could have focused on. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. There's old DJT, America First, America's back at the Cracker Barrel. Notice where we stole that from. We stole that from the Donald John Trump himself. You're welcome. We steal memes shamelessly from everybody. We don't care. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Next meme of the day, comedian Steve Byrne. If you'd like this hat, you'll have to apply for a hat wearing permit. It takes 4 months, pay 37% hat tax, and pick it up via high-speed rail. And it's a hat that says Newsom was right about everything. A little California joke. Steve Byrne is a Californian, referring to the debacle of the Newsom governorship there, and a take on the Donald Trump hat. Newsom's been wrong on everything. Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. This one's stolen from the Babylon Bee. Taylor Swift engagement overturned as a referee determined Travis Kelce's knee did not touch the ground. That's true. That's true. We got to see if the NFL is recognizing this engagement, if they did it properly. But there's the NFL ref sneaking out from behind the bushes going, foul, personal foul. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, that silence means we have milked the meme machine dry. Our question of the day has been a huge success. I like Jeff's answer on the Twitter machine. He says Dr. Tom Hecker and Mother Teresa. Anybody who knows Dr. Hecker, a longtime friend of my program, longtime sponsor for many years, and used to do Medical Monday with me between that's a long story. I have to tell that behind-the-scenes story one time. A great friend as well. Matter of fact, I was messaging Dr. Hecker just this past week. If you have an injury out there and you want to avoid surgery, he's a guy that's really tries to find the non-surgical ways to surgery. He treated my son's first injury, even though my son was in Missouri. We did some what we call exosomes, and we did some great things with Dr. Hecker. And when I got the latest MRI for my son, guess what? I sent it over to Dr. Hecker, and he was we were just texting a couple of days ago about that. So Dr. Tom Hecker, that's a great answer. Not everybody knows who Dr. Hecker is, but I agree. Dr. Hecker is a guy that if you should be hating on him. He's a guy that saved a heck of a lot of athletes in their careers and figured out how to do it as much as possible with non-surgical means. So Dr. Hecker, I like that answer, Jeff, very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to wrap it up here. If you want to donate to the charity, don't forget riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org. And also, my friends, don't forget that $10 goes a long way. Register for the golf event, riverspromise.org. Let's see in the next 22 hours, 21 hours worth. No, 23 hours. 22 hours and 45 minutes before the next show. How much can we raise of our $10 drive? $10. Buy a uniform for a kid. We appreciate your help there again. A uniform never meant so much. It's actually a full wardrobe. Until I meet you tomorrow right here on the show, don't forget riverspromise.org. Thank you, Sherry Cree. Appreciate all of you, all the great folks we talked about on the show. Thank you very much for sponsoring and loving on us every week. Be here tomorrow morning. Until we meet again, God bless you. God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm out of here.